Skyler.
Back to the third annual Walt Disney World Attraction Bracket Challenge. The Sweet 16 is just about to end, and the Elite 8 is about to start. Favorites have fallen, behemoths have prevailed, and few remain as we watch to find out who is the favorite Walt Disney World attraction in 2020. I'm your announcer, Nate Begle, joined by your host and technical director, Disney Dan.
Hey, folks, welcome. Ooh, Nate, you must have used your thesaurus for that opening. My goodness.
And, of course, your color commentator, Kevin Perjurer.
It's great to be here, Nate. I'm really excited.
You sound overly excited. I can't even contain you at this moment. And today, our expert attractions correspondent, Jack from DSNY Newscast.
Hello, everybody. You're right. That's quite the build-up there. That's quite the hype. I don't know if I'm an expert at this. Probably going to be shown to be an idiot now, so great.
Well, after the show is over, you will in fact be expert status.
Great.
Well, we had some
Dan, take it away.
We had some interesting kind of face-offs in the Sweet 16 matchups, and most of them were pretty much home runs, but there were a couple tighter races and one or two very close neck-and-neck races. And we currently have, the polls are still open. They're still open for another 25 minutes. So I thought that we could jump in and kind of discuss where each of the races are right now and kind of break down how each of the attractions are doing. So Nate, you want to jump into Exploration Round 3 and take a look at the two matchups and tell us where we're at?
Absolutely. So in Exploration Region Round 3, currently we have two battles, the Monster Mash and Thank the Roadie. The Monster Mash, the Haunted Mansion versus Rockin' Roller Coaster. Thank the Roadie, Expedition Everest versus Spaceship Earth.
Yeah, there's some, boy, of course we knew the Haunted Mansion was going to just take down Rockin' Roller Coaster, no problem. But, man, Expedition Everest and Spaceship Earth had a pretty tight fight. Kev, what do you? We saw this happening. We saw Expedition. You know, we predicted it, I believe. But are you surprised? I mean, are you surprised that Spaceship Earth did as well as it did versus such a large beloved thrill ride attraction such as Everest?
No, this is entirely predictable, as we predicted. I mean, Expedition Everest is, as I keep saying, one of the most underrated attractions in this entire tournament. It is a 2-seed, so it is highly ranked, but it's just overlooked. I thought it was gonna do really well. Spaceship Earth, I think, showed vulnerability early in this tournament. It had a close match earlier on. Who did it face in in round 2? Do we remember? If anybody has those up, if we go back to the round 2 and we look at Spaceship Earth, let's look at that.
In round 2, faced off against Dinosaur.
Okay, yeah, and I forget the exact margins, but it was Dinosaur didn't lose. It wasn't a huge blowout, and that kind of predicted that this would have not been in Spaceship Earth's favor. It's not Spaceship Earth's year. Just from a attraction quality perspective, to throw it over to our correspondent. Jack, what do you think? Does this line up with your own personal favorites?
My own personal favorites? Well, to be honest, I do like Everest. I really do like Expedition Everest, but Spaceship Earth always wins in my book. Whenever I can ride it, I will ride it. And to be honest, I'm very disappointed that I probably won't be able to ride it again before it gets refurbed, if that happens now. With regards to Haunted Mansion versus Rock'n Roller Coaster, in Walt Disney World, I would probably give Rock'n Roller Coaster the edge over the Haunted Mansion. I know a lot of people are going to come at me for this one because Haunted Mansion is beloved, but it's not quite as good as Phantom Manor or Disneyland's Haunted Mansion, in my opinion.
Ooh, that's
So I
interesting.
would probably-
That's an interesting take because Kevin and I have talked about this at length. And Haunted Mansion in Disneyland just feels like a warehouse with set pieces in it, versus at Magic Kingdom feels like they learned a lot of lessons. Remember, I think Kev, you and I talked about this last time we were out in California together. That in Florida they learned a lot from what the first go around and improved quite a bit. I would say WDW's Haunted Mansion in Florida is the best in the U.S.
Of the two?
Of the two.
Yeah.
I don't know.
See, I love the MC Escher room. I love the library. I don't believe that's the same in the other one, in the Disneyland version. I don't know. I think that it doesn't have the Hatbox Ghost, and I guess it's up in the air which exterior you like better. I prefer Walt Disney World's exterior. I also think it's always a scary, spooky, like dream walking by the Haunted Mansion and then immediately being assaulted by Splash Mountain at Disneyland. It's just they're just cartoonishly right next to each other, and to a Walt Disney World goer, it's very jarring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It feels like you're dreaming and you forgot how the park in your brain, like your subconscious, forgot how the park was laid out. And so, it feels like a dream. Like, yeah, and I walked right to Space Mountain after that. It's like right next to each other. It's weird. I have a lot of hang-ups about Disneyland's Haunted Mansion.
Absolutely. Nate, can you take us into Imagination Round 3 and let's take a look at that face-off, those two face-offs?
All right, over to the Imagination region. The round 3 matchups were Brer Bullseye, Splash Mountain versus Toy Story Midway Mania, and the Navi River Cruise. The Jungle Cruise versus Avatar's Flight of Passage.
Yeah, boy, we saw Splash Mountain just completely overtake Toy Story Midway Mania. I'm surprised Toy Story Midway Mania did as poorly as it did compared to, considering it's just everyone wants a fast pass for it. Everyone wants to, ride it each time they're there. While Splash Mountain is kind of this up in the air, I don't want to get wet kind of thing. It surprises me that Midway Mania did so poorly. But the Jungle Cruise Flight of Passage, man, I can't believe how tight that race was. Kev, what do you think?
Neither of these are surprising, other than the fact that Flight of Passage and Jungle Cruise were close. This shows how predictable the next round's going to be when Splash Mountain goes against Flight of Passage. Splash Mountain's going to blow it out of the water. But, we're looking at Midway Mania, which barely skirted by a 5-point lead, a 5-vote lead, less than 1 percentage point lead over, I believe it was against Seven Dwarves in the previous round. So that did not bode well for it. Midway Mania always does better than I think it's going to do, but it does about its rank, which is about a 4 seed. So it was rightfully going to get blown out to the 1 seed Splash Mountain. Splash Mountain is one of the most popular attractions in this tournament. It always does well. It was in the Final Four, lost to Haunted Mansion 2018. It was in the finals in 2018 and 2019 and lost to Haunted Mansion. Again, Haunted Mansion is the only attraction that has shown that it can beat Splash Mountain. So if you think of it that the 2-time reigning champion is the only thing that can knock out Splash, it was pretty obvious that Midway Mania wasn't going to do it. Jungle Cruise versus Flight of Passage. This is just, I think, we get down to the nitty-gritty of I guess I'll throw it over to Jack. Jack, you don't love Flight of Passage.
No, you do not, Jack. Tell us why, man. Break it down for us.
Well, okay. So I don't. Yes, I'm one of the people who doesn't like Flight of Passage. It feels like I'm at an AA meeting right now. Hi, I'm Jack, and I don't like Flight of Passage.
Hi, Jack.
Yeah, and the reason for it is. The reason for it is basically I just feel like the experience doesn't live up to what it's trying to be. I probably ruined it for myself very early on by looking behind yourself and seeing the thing moving up and down in the background. And then I also feel like the field of view isn't quite as immersive as what it should be. You can see too much of the dome on the sides. And it just doesn't. And then the 3D really does my head in. Literally, from the standpoint of it blurs the screen, and I just feel that really takes me out of the moment. I would much rather be watching just the screen as it is. And oftentimes I do just lift up the glasses and just have a much better time just watching the screen without the glasses on. But so, I mean, I just feel like the 3D is a bit of a cheap kind of like gimmicky trick.
You should make your own special pair of 3D glasses where you just put the one polarized lens in both, so you could just see a straight 2D shot.
How about like like ski goggles or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, just one like polarized. Yeah, I'm surprised actually they don't offer that. Let's get like Yellow Shoes on the phone or something. We got to call somebody. Do like a specialty pair of glasses. That's interesting that you like. I agree with you on a lot of that. It kind of locks you into a weird. I'm not but I guess the way that they have to lock you in and position you is. Sorry, what was that?
We're not on a Banshee, you know what I mean? I know we're meant to be on like, you know, the link chairs and all the other stuff, but like, I don't know. It just doesn't. Why have the link chair like breathing if we already know we're not on the Banshee? Like, well, what's the point of that? I don't get
that.
It.
Doesn't make sense. I need one of those
suspension
for my
of
house.
Disbelief.
There's nothing more. There's nothing more soothing. I need one of those for my house. There's nothing more soothing than that. Just that steady breath of a Banshee in between your legs. It's such a fantastic experience, but I understand where you're coming from. You know, to solve your issue of that, you know, you can see other ride vehicles. Maybe we could treat this like Manhattan Apartments, and some of the ride vehicles can be pushed forward while others are receded. So the receded ones can fully see another person enjoying the ride in front of them, while the ones that pay extra or have a certain fast pass can be elevated forward so that as to not see, so they can have a full field of view. How would you feel about that?
What, like the cheap seats, in the back? Yeah, I don't mind that. Yeah,
I don't think everybody deserves the same experience.
Maybe just have a separate room, or maybe just for people who pay lots of money, just they get like the proper like roller coaster that they were meant to get. You know, instead of just making Flight of Passage the main e-ticket of the whole land. I don't know. It's an okay ride. If you gave me a straight choice between that and Soarin', I would always pick Soarin' over Flight of Passage. I know a lot of people disagree with me. I'm definitely in like the bottom like 2% in terms of saying that probably. But
well, actually, we have the statistics. Let's tell you.
Tell me about Soarin'.
Soarin', no.
Isn't the new Avengers ride going to be Flight of Passage-esque, but taken to another level in a way?
Esque, yeah. So, well, it depends now whether we ever see that happen. I mean, you know, within our lifetime. I don't know. So, what the leading Imagineer director, you know, on it, Scott Drake, has said previously, I think it was at the Comic-Con this past October, he said that basically it's going to have independent flight, which means that they're working on an innovative ride system that you will be moving independently to the guests around you. So each person will be moving in their own kind of flight path in many ways. So unlike the rows that we see in Flight of Passage or the rows in Soarin', I'm guessing we will be pushed out into a dome, but we might be on some sort of KUKA arm or something like that. I'm only guessing at what independent flight could be, but maybe we'll be seeing something like that with the KUKA arm technology.
I got this vibe that it's a little bit like the extraterrestrial chairs, where you're kind of going to get locked into some kind of like specific design chair that will then, you know, let you shoot lasers and
like
that kind
a
of stuff.
jetpack. Yeah, it's going to be a jetpack. And
what extraterrestrial ride? What?
The Alien Encounter.
Oh, Alien Encounter. I thought you were talking about E.T. at Universal. I was like, what E.T. ride?
No, extraterrestrial.
Okay, extraterrestrial.
Yeah, terrestrial.
I just feel that like if they do the whole independent flight thing correctly, and if they even bring in some gamification of it, so like let's say you had, like you say, with the shooting lasers and stuff like that, and you could shoot at the screen to try and help the Avengers, I think this could be like a game changer in terms of like interactive attraction, which, you know, makes it feel like you are an Avenger or helping them.
See, and that's what I don't like about those type of attractions, Jack. I like the attractions that tell me, hey, you're not supposed to be here. What are you doing? And then something happens, and then things go wrong, and then they come back, and the hero's like, "Hey, you got to get out of here, man." And then I'm not making the decisions here. I have no there's no interchangeability. I can't do anything. And then at the end, he said, "That was a close one. Thanks for your help." And I felt like neither did I help, but I also didn't have the option to leave. Why can't we have more of those attractions?
I think there's this thing called money.
Those are actually really cheap to make, so I don't buy that. Dan, let's go on.
Yeah, Nate, are you ready to dive into Education Round 3, the results, and take a look at the 2 matchups from Round 3?
All right, on to the Education region. The Round 3 matchups, we had Space Force, Hollywood Studios' new Rise of the Resistance versus Magic Kingdom Space Mountain, and the Moving Mountains, Big Thunder Mountain versus the People Mover. Now, the Education region looks like we have our 2 closest matchups throughout this entire competition in this Round 3.
Yeah, the People Mover fan base did its best, but it just can't hold up. I mean, we're going to take a closer look at this as we look at the Elite Eight matchups, but it doesn't seem as though this is going to change. The gap is even widening. You know, People Mover was in the lead for a brief time. Big Thunder Mountain, and it fought 50-50 for a while. But it's just sad that for all those People Mover fans out there, this is the first year that the People Mover will not be moving on to the Final Four. Yeah, I mean, we're getting a lot more context, especially because if we continue with this voting system next year, it's going to be even more difficult to justify it as a 2 seed. Now, it does have 2 Final Fours under its belt, but it's lost to Pirates of the Caribbean as well as the Haunted Mansion. And the Haunted Mansion is actually what's going to save it from moving down to a 3rd seed possibly. Because up against the Haunted Mansion in a different voting system, it lost 52-48. So that's 4 percentage points. That's not a lot at all. That's actually, and we're going to take a look at this, one of the closest calls Haunted Mansion, an undefeated attraction, has ever had. That's why People Mover, we got to keep an eye on it, even if it does. I mean, it's going to lose today probably, and that's disappointing. But I think it'll still end up being a 2 seed next year, because you got to consider that it is correctly ranked as a 2 seed. If it made it to the Final Four twice, we're still recognizing that it is its fan base, not its actual quality necessarily, that is getting it to these rounds. Because getting to the Final Four twice should mean you're a 1 seed. Because Final Four, there's 4 1 seeds. There should be, if you get there twice, it should, like I said, you should be a 1 seed. But it's a 2 seed because these things were taken into consideration. People Mover was actually the attraction that was knocked down to a 2 seed because of Rise of the Resistance. And we're also seeing in the same slide here, Rise of the Resistance having trouble edging out Space Mountain. It's winning. It's going to win. But Space Mountain is one of the most outdated rides at Walt Disney World, in my own personal opinion. I love it a lot. I hope they update it. But that thing has not been changed a lot, or very significantly, minus pre-show, post-show, since 1975 when it opened. Ride vehicles have changed slightly. You don't have to sit in each other's laps, but it's still that very rickety old OG steel tubular roller coaster that it was in 75. So do you see anything surprising here, Jack? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I love Space Mountain in Walt Disney World. It's an incredible roller coaster. I do love Space Mountain in Walt Disney World, but you're going up against Rise of Resistance, the next gen attraction, ultra immersive, all of the superlatives that you can throw at it. But to be honest, when it comes to People Mover versus Big Thunder, I'm actually kind of surprised there that People Mover didn't actually beat out Big Thunder, because in my opinion, Big Thunder, especially in Walt Disney World, I just don't see it as anything special. I've ridden the one in Disneyland Paris, and that is actually a much better Big Thunder Mountain. And I'd say the one in Disneyland is actually a better Big Thunder Mountain, because you got the old scenes from the Rainbow Ridge and all that sort of stuff in there. as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that, and it's also got the one in Disneyland also has the explosion effects, as well as Disneyland Paris's one has that as well. When they're working, it's fantastic. So I'm just surprised that Big Thunder's actually beaten out People Move there, because People Move is an original attraction, can't be found anywhere else. Especially nowadays with Disneyland and all the other stuff. So I'm just surprised that one didn't make it a bit further, actually. And it would have been fantastic to see People Mover make it to some of the final rounds.
Yeah, we kind of touched on this often, specifically with Pirates of the Caribbean, how the name of the attraction carries all of the positives from all of the parks, and very few of the negatives from a specific park. And so
of the exact one we're talking about in Walt Disney World, yeah. See what I mean?
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So
and
Big
people
Thunder,
associate that.
Pirates, yeah, and so they just keep voting for, oh, that's my favorite attraction, and don't necessarily, this year we put in that Pirates specifically was the Magic Kingdom attraction, and it hasn't even really swayed anybody, despite the fact that it's way worse than Disneyland's.
That's what I was about to say with Pirates is Pirates of the Caribbean is my favorite ride of all rides ever. I mean, Rise of Resistance gives it a run for its money, but still Pirates I love more than anything else. And I would say Pirates in Magic Kingdom, it's the worst Pirates of all of them around the world. And I would not be picking that one over the I think it's up against which one is up against again?
Speaking of Pirates, why don't we just jump in there and have Nate lay down the Inspiration Round 3 results? And let us take a look at how those votes are turning out, and then we'll dive into that. Nate?
All right, laying down the inspiration. Here is the Inspiration Region, Round 3. Matchup, Acrophobia, Tower of Terror versus Soarin', and that dog is never going to move. Slinky Dog Dash versus Pirates of the Caribbean, the dog that doesn't move, seemingly blasting past the dog that moves very fast in that matchup.
I got that.
I also technically got it. Yeah, no, these were obvious going in. I mean, Soarin', it just doesn't hold up. If we look back in previous years as we say goodbye to Soarin' and Slinky Dog Dash, we only have one year to talk about Slinky Dog, and that was last year. And Slinky Dog beat Seas with Nemo and Friends, and then was eliminated by Star Tours in a very, very close matchup, 51-49 in round 2. Now this has been a better year for Slinky Dog. Clearly, it's gotten past round 2. It's in the Sweet 16. That's very good. It's going to help to keep its third seed. But we knew that it was going to lose to Tower of Terror. Tower of Terror is a 1 seed here. Excuse me. We knew it was going to lose to Pirates of the Caribbean, which is a 2 seed here. And Pirates of the Caribbean lost in the finals in 2018, and that was a huge deal because the next year it was eliminated in the Elite 8. And so, we probably knew it was going to lose. I don't think we ever saw it. I know we never saw this matchup before, but it was pretty clear what was going to happen. With Tower of Terror and Soarin', this comes down to, I think, theming. I think ride-wise, I don't think anybody, maybe I could be wrong, but I don't think anybody really prefers one or the other. I think they recognize them as two different things. Perhaps some people that really don't like the feeling of falling prefer Soarin', but neither of these, I think provide that much of a difference. I know there's a lot more adrenaline in Tower of Terror, but I think the main vote, despite maybe some ride differences, comes down to aesthetic and theming, and Tower of Terror just has that huge likability as that, cobwebs. It's cobwebs. 1920s cobwebs.
What was the hashtag from last night? Hashtag spooky cobwebs.
Get your cobwebs.
Hashtag get your cobwebs.
If you're gonna get your cobwebs, yeah.
Yeah, get your cobwebs.
So I don't know. I'll throw it over to Jack. Jack, Tower of Terror. You got Soarin', Pirates of the Caribbean, and Slinky Dog. Of those 4, which is your go-to?
So we got Slinky Dog, Soarin', Tower of Terror. I've got to say is probably one of my favorite rides of all of the rides around the world, especially one in Walt Disney World. Soarin' also holds a special place in my heart. I just love that attraction. There's something that's so simple with Soarin'. It's incredibly effective. Slinky Dog, in my opinion, It's a fun ride, but at the end of the day, I didn't like when people called it a kiddie coaster, but it doesn't hold up there with some of the great attractions, and I never understand the reason why people are so keen on Slinky Dog in many ways. What was the last one as well there? Sorry. What was the last one?
Pirates.
Pirates. I've already said my piece on pirates, but if we were talking about Paris Pirates or Disneyland in California Pirates of the Caribbean, different matter. But I still ride pirates whenever I can in Walt Disney World, but it leaves a lot to be desired, in my opinion.
And I think with Pirates, we get a bad rap because of how much better Disneyland is. But if you just look at Pirates, it's still an incredible dark ride at Magic Kingdom. I mean, it's still really, really, really well done. I mean, that reveal of coming down the waterfall and just going out into the night sky and the ship battle. I mean, that is, when you compare that to your other options at Walt Disney World for elaborate dark rides,
absolutely,
that's about as good as it's going to get.
Right. Absolutely.
And so, you have Rise of the Resistance, and that really does help. But, some of the biggest e-tickets at Walt Disney World are not that style of ride.
That immersive, yeah. Well, it's the very first kind of like immersive experience attraction, isn't it? Because 360 everywhere you look is pretty much something going on. But I don't know. I mean, I've just been spoilt over the years because obviously being, living in the UK and growing up here, we always used to go to Disneyland Paris. We went to Walt Disney World quite a bit, but Disneyland Paris was kind of our go-to, and I would say their Pirates is better than Walt Disney World. So whenever I ride Walt Disney World's Pirates now, I just see all the areas from a critical standpoint of where it could be a lot better. But I still enjoy it. I still really enjoy it. And my girlfriend always books me a fast pass for it because I hate queuing. And she always begrudges me having a fast pass for Pirates.
Okay, well,
I
Jack,
really do.
I don't mean to cut you off, but the voting is now officially ended. The voting is officially ended for round 3. And we're taking a look here live now at the results as they all came in. We're populating. Over 1,000 of you guys voted, so I really appreciate you guys all turning out to vote. And so now it looks like we have our Elite 8. Are we ready to dive into announcing the next round, the Elite 8 for the Walt Disney World attractions? You gentlemen ready?
Yes, go for it, Nate.
Nate, take us.
All right.
Take us through.
Are we gonna go? Let's go
exploration
region by region.
Yep. Let's take a look at the final matchup for the exploration region.
All right, for the exploration region for the Elite 8, we will have the number 1 seed Haunted Mansion versus the number 2 seed Expedition Everest. Now, what do we think about this one, folks? We think Haunted Mansion, the former reigning champion, going against Expedition Everest, the number 2 seed, the most underrated ride in Kevin's eyes. Does the Yeti have a chance against those 999 happy haunts?
Well, we're gonna talk all about, because I have some previous statistics to go over to actually break down this Haunted Mansion versus Expedition Everest, and I don't know if Dan can pull those up or if we should just read off all the Elite 8 before we.
I'm happy to continue on, and then we'll go back and then delve into some more details. That sounds good.
Let's take a look at the Imagination Region's final matchup.
All right, the Imagination region for the Elite 8 matchup will be the number 1 seed Splash Mountain versus the number 2 seed Avatar's Flight of Passage, Jack's all-time favorite ride.
This is going to be an interesting matchup for sure. 2 really, really great rides. Yeah. Let's just keep moving on so we can go do them all together. Let's take a look at the Educational Regional and take a look at the final matchup for that region. Nate?
Absolutely. For the Elite 8 matchup in the Educational region, we will have the brand new number 1 seed Rise of the Resistance versus the number 3 seed, outbeating the number 2 seed People Mover, Big Thunder Mountain.
Ooh, yep. We've got the Thunderous Mountain versus that Resistance that's rising. Nate, throw down the last region for inspiration.
All right, inspirational region. Rounding out the Elite Eight is the number 1 seed, Tower of Terror, versus the number 2 seed, Pirates of the Caribbean and/or Caribbean. They're both mutually acceptable.
Are they both acceptable? Because Jack
Yes.
and I say it differently.
Caribbean is the way.
Is it?
Caribbean
Because I
is the
say
way you say it.
Caribbean. Caribbean?
Yeah, you always said it correctly. You always said it correctly, man.
Caribbean is how the ride and the movie are pronounced in marketing, but the actual Caribbean is more often said Caribbean.
Yeah.
The place is said Caribbean, the ride and I mean, both are correct as far as the real world, I believe. I think Caribbean is actually more commonly used
Well, thank the Phoenicians.
in reality.
So now we have our Elite Eight matchups. This is going to be a wild ride. Are you guys? Is there any matchups, Kevin, that you stand out in particular to you?
So we're gonna go break these down right after this, but we're looking at this. If we, I have the slide pulled up. This is interesting because there are 2 new contenders on the board that have never been in an Elite Eight in this tournament. That's Rise of the Resistance and Big Thunder Mountain, and they're going against one another. If you look at the bottom here, we have Spaceship Earth, Space Mountain, and People Mover. Those are all 3 attractions that have been to the Elite Eight before. I believe Spaceship Earth has been once or twice, Space Mountain has only been once, and People Mover has been both times. And not only has it been both times, but it's moved on past this Elite Eight that it's not even in this year. That's significant. Let's also take a look here at the, these colors are actually, they mean something. The green is Animal Kingdom, the blue is Magic Kingdom, the red is Hollywood Studios, and the yellow is Epcot. And we see on the board, we have 4 Magic Kingdom, 2 Animal Kingdom, and 2 Hollywood Studios, and 0 Epcot representation. Spaceship Earth was the best chance Epcot had, obviously, and now it's out. However, that said, the fact that Expedition Everest, Flight of Passage, Tower of Terror, and Rise of the Resistance is here is there's a better chance this year that a Magic Kingdom attraction will not win. Tower of Terror, I believe, is the only attraction that is not from the Magic Kingdom that has ever made it to the Final Four, although I'd have to check that to be 100% certain, but I believe that's the case. Let me check. I'm going to check. We're about to check, and we're checking. Haunted Mansion, Tower of Terror, Splash Mountain, People Mover in 2019, Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, People Mover, and Splash Mountain. So yes, Tower of Terror is the only one that has ever, outside of the Magic Kingdom, ever made it to the Final Four. So this year, potentially, there could be no Magic Kingdom attractions in the Final Four. That's, of course, not going to happen. But there's a shot.
Wow, it's wild. Absolutely wild. Do we want to take a look matchup by matchup, or do you want to wait until the polls open for us to start breaking those down?
That is completely up to you. I can go whenever. I wanted to throw it over to Jack and ask him on the balance of attractions here, Jack, between Magic Kingdom and Hollywood Studios. Does this line up with how you rate the parks in your own head, or is this just indicative of like how the e-tickets are being spread out across parks?
To be honest, I thought it would be. I mean, it's a shame. I don't know if it was too late for us to have Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway in there. It was way too late for us to.
No, it was in there. It lost.
Oh, really?
Right.
Really? That's surprising.
It lost to who did Mickey and Minnie's lose
Flight
to?
of Passage.
Okay.
It beat out in round 1. Mickey and Minnie's went up against Country Bear Jamboree and had a really tight match with nearly a 50-50 split. But right at the last moment, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway took it. Then in Flight of Passage kind of creamed it. Mickey and Minnie took about 30% of the vote. Otherwise, Flight of Passage was a strong contender.
Do you think? So I heard your theory earlier on about, which I actually do think is completely accurate, like you say, Dan, about people think about holistically the attraction at every single park around the world instead of just thinking about one in Walt Disney World. But do you think another thing at play here will be the amount of people who have actually ridden these rides? In which case, Rise of Resistance, out of the audience who are watching and are voting, do you think that the fact that maybe some people haven't been able to ride it yet, their annual holiday to Walt Disney World or whatever might have been postponed because of obviously the circumstance at that moment. Do you think that might affect it?
Yeah,
personally,
we saw Smuggler's Run, we saw Mickey and Minnie and Rise of the Resistance, all 3 new attractions. Rise and Mickey and Minnie had the least amount of available time to the public versus Smuggler's Run, which went out relatively early in, I believe, round 2 against the People Mover. The People Mover creamed it. So It is interesting how I think that as people have more time to have return visits and re-ride Rise and re-ride Runaway Railway, or even ride it for the first time, that might affect it. And I think that in 2021, the bracket's going to have some very interesting results if provided parks open, in any reasonable amount of time. But yeah, no, you make
they will. I mean,
yeah, they will.
Yeah.
But yeah, you make a fair point. It's like, what does
Yeah.
what constitutes what constitutes earning a vote in this? Is it the hype surrounding it? Is it the love of the attraction? Is it just how classic the attraction is? It's very interesting how the spread has kind of and I think that next year or coming soon, Guardians, Mary Poppins, Ratatouille.
Mary Poppins is never going to happen.
Yeah, Mary Poppins is not going to happen now.
Oh, really?
Well,
but
I
remove that one from your finger there.
I think that we'll see Guardians in the Elite Eight next year. I think that will definitely happen, or or the year that it opens.
Guardians, for sure. Yeah, because I mean, from a attraction standpoint now, I think everything's being pushed back by at least. We're looking at probably 2 to 3 months. Everything's been pushed back, and Guardians was already going to be late in 2021 for an opening. So we might be seeing that in 2022 now. But Remy's Ratatouille Adventure next year will be in this whole thing, and personally, I don't anticipate that probably getting very far because I've ridden it a couple of times at Disneyland Paris, and it's never been something which I have really enjoyed that much. Then again, I don't really like 3D attractions that have me moving about, except for Star Tours. But that could just be me. But with regards to what Kevin asked earlier about how I think it stacks up, 4 Magic Kingdom attractions there versus 2 of Animal Kingdom and Disney's Hollywood Studios. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Animal Kingdom, but I do think that Expedition Everest should be there in the final 8, along with Rise of Resistance and Tower of Terror. But the only other one which I'd have substituted in would have been Spaceship Earth instead of Flight of Passage. But that's just me personally.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think those are as they have been. That's Flight of Passage is of the e-tickets has been the most. I think it's a great ride. I really enjoy it, but I also recognize that it is not for everyone, both like on a personal satisfaction basis and just in general as far as accessibility, as we talked about last night. That ride is very universal in its lack of accessibility, and so that's going to be the most similar to, as Dan mentioned again last night, was Tron. When Tron comes out, that's going to be another ride that lacks accessibility for certain body types. And certain people, and that's going to affect its performance. It's not going to be your favorite ride if you can't ride it because it has some weird, different ride system that you have to contort your body into in a certain way that just doesn't work for everybody.
I do believe with Tron at the back of the train, at the back of the ride vehicle, there is an ADA, accessible.
Oh, is there?
Okay.
That's really cool.
I didn't know that.
Just at the very end of it, I think there is.
Oh, really? That's cool.
I've never been to Shanghai, so I haven't ridden it, but I believe there is one right at the end of it.
Well, that's really great then. I didn't know about that.
I gotta say, one of the best parts about wearing this hat is that while I'm technical directing, Goofy's still looking at the camera.
So yeah, Dan, when does the Elite 8 open up for people to vote? Actually, you know what? Before we start, let's do the predictions because that's the point of predicting them.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. Let's go round robin. Nate, you want to tell us who your predictions are in this Elite 8, and tell us who do you think is going to take it? Oh, wait. What were you?
I had some stat sheets to read off for everybody, and then before everybody gets theirs going.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at them. Let's jump over to the Exploration Region final matchup: Haunted Mansion versus Expedition Everest. Kev, what kind of stats did you pull together for us to take a look at?
All right, so we're looking at Haunted Mansion versus Expedition Everest. This is just based off of previous matchups. Haunted Mansion is undefeated. Excuse me. They're the back-to-back defending champion. The closest races Haunted Mansion has ever had, this is super important, they beat Splash Mountain 52-48 in 2018. Closest race in 2019, same ratio, same score, but it was the People Mover. They still won in both of those, but that's the closest it's ever been. Besides that, there's been like a 56, 44, there's maybe been a 64, 36. But other than that, Haunted Mansion racks up 70, 80, 90% of the vote against any opponent. However, it has never faced Expedition Everest, and so that's going to be very interesting. Expedition Everest, it was a 5 seed in 2018. It was way underranked. It lost to Tower of Terror in the Sweet 16, 55 to 45. It was then a 6 seed in 2019 because of that loss. It should have been moved up. That was a mistake. And then it lost to the People Mover, I believe in the Elite 8 that year. Exactly where it is right now, except for it's going to be going against the Haunted Mansion. It lost to the People Mover by just 55 votes, 51 to 49. That's the best comparable we have here when we're trying to decide who's going to win. I think it's going to be the Haunted Mansion, but if we're looking statistically, considering the Haunted Mansion, its closest race was 52 to 48 against the People Mover, I think that Expedition Everest has a shot, considering it has a very similar ratio to losing to the People Mover. But if I had to put a guess, it's going to be 55-45 Haunted Mansion. Jack, what do you think?
Obviously, I can't dive into all of those statistics the same way that you have there, Kevin. But I can only really give my own. I just can't because I can't follow along quite as fast as that. But the Haunted Mansion versus Everest, I would want to see Everest win, and I believe that it won't win against Mansion. Because of the previous reason that people, the Mansion fans out there and stuff like that, you don't really have that same kind of fan following for Everest. But if we were looking at sheer, which is the more, the better attraction, the unique attraction of the two, you got to pick Everest because it's the only one that is in existence in the world, and it's got the thrill factor. It accommodates to a lot of height requirements as well. I just believe that Everest should win there, but I don't think it will. I think Mansion will.
Yeah, it'll be a really tight race. Nate, what do you think? Who do you think's going to take it?
You know what? Very similar to what Jack was saying. I think it's going to be, desire versus reality. And I also personally would love to see the Yeti move on to the Final Four and beat the Haunted Mansion.
Listen, no one's seen the Yeti move anytime soon, Nate. All right, so let's.
That's true. If present years is any indication, that Yeti is not going anywhere in this matchup. But it could be. It's anyone's game. These two have never faced off against each other, so it could be. Stranger things have happened, but looks like the champion will most likely move on to the Final Four.
All right, let's take a look at the Imagination Regional Final match with some of your stats, Kev. You want to take us through Splash Mountain and Flight of Passage?
Sure. So Splash Mountain was eliminated in the Final Four in 2018 and then in the championship in 2019. So it did better. This is only because it didn't face the Haunted Mansion in the Final Four. If it wins and the Haunted Mansion wins, they will face each other in this year's Final Four. If history's any indication, Splash Mountain will lose. In 2018, it lost 55% to 45% to the Haunted Mansion. It faced them again in 2018, 59% to 41% against the Haunted Mansion. Again, we've only done this for 2 years, so everybody only has 2 losses under their belts, except for Haunted Mansion, which has 0 losses. The Splash Mountain has never lost to anybody except for the Haunted Mansion, but they've never seen Flight of Passage. That said, Flight of Passage, 2 seed this year, was eliminated in the Elite 8 in 2018. The same exact spot, but to Pirates of the Caribbean. It lost to Pirates of the Caribbean by a huge margin, 62 to 38. Wow. Not close at all.
Massive.
Eliminated in the Elite 8 in 2019 by the Haunted Mansion by a bigger margin, 64 to 36. It has had close calls. Flight of Passage, Jack, you're going to get excited by this if you can follow along this. Is that these statistics here, just because Flight of Passage has made it to the Elite 8 does not mean it hasn't had close calls. In the past, when going against Kilimanjaro Safaris, Flight of Passage lost. It won 51 to 49. That's super
100%.
Close. Just a few votes. And then against Star Tours, 52 to 48. So these attractions that, usually drop around 2 or Sweet 16, Flight of Passage is a hard time, winning against. So there's no question in my mind who's going to win this. It's going to be Splash Mountain by huge numbers. I think Haunted Mansion numbers. Jack, on your end, you've spoken
Well-
to Flight of Passage, but what about Splash
Well-
Mountain? Where's that in your mind?
Well, I was just going to say, looking at your statistics there, you're saying that Kilimanjaro, Safaris, and Star Tours both gave Flight of Passage a very close run for its money.
Absolutely.
And there could be two reasons for that. One is Kilimanjaro Safaris, when you get on that attraction, the longevity of the attraction, it feels like, you're getting the amount of time that you've probably waited or the fast pass that you've used for the attraction, you're getting your money's worth in many ways. So that plays into it. And then Star Tours, you've got obviously the Star Wars fandom, and then you've also got the fact that it's been around for so long, so it's classed as kind of like a modern classic versus Flight of Passage. Whereas so if we compare that logic to Splash Mountain is a classic attraction, but I don't think it has that same fandom that it has there. The same type of fandom that like a Star Wars or Star Tours has. So I would like to see Splash Mountain win because we all know how I feel about Flight of Passage. Not that I hate Flight of Passage, but
The chat got mad at you earlier, Jack. The chat was not happy with you.
It's not like I want to drown Flight of Passage in the waters of Splash Mountain, but
Sivako.
no, because I love Nave River Journey. That's probably gonna get me a lot of hate.
So
but,
you're saying that
a
Navi River Journey overlay to Splash Mountain would make you happy?
Yeah, because at least it'd be a 2-minute ride.
And then you just replace the buzzards with the shaman, and she just she does the AWA, and then you fall. I think that could work.
And then we all sing the song as we go down.
Right.
That's it. I feel like Splash Mountain will probably lose to Flight of Passage just because Flight of Passage has that same buzz factor that Rise of Resistance still does. But I would like to see Splash Mountain win because I prefer Splash Mountain to Flight of Passage. That being said, it has been a while since I rode Splash Mountain just because I don't fancy getting wet every single time I go to a Disney park nowadays. But I think Flight of Passage will probably win if we're talking about the votes.
Nate, what do you see happening here?
Really interesting to hear him say that because I think, again, we're going to really come up here as we get down into the final four. It's really going to be nostalgia versus new and exciting. And feels like in this kind of competition, nostalgia wins 9 times out of 10. And as much as it would be fun to see a newish ride take over one of the classics like this, it was Banshees, as we know, can fly, but from the looks of it, most likely will not be able to swim very well in the waters of Splash Mountain.
All right.
Absolutely.
So,
let's look at the next one.
Kev, we now have the stats for the educational region final matchup: Rise of the Resistance versus Big Thunder Mountain. Break us down how these two performed in the past and what that means for how they might perform today.
Rise of Resistance is, of course, new this year, but here's how it did this year so far. It beat Prince Charming and Regal Carousel 90-10. This was a huge blowout, but expected, and even it didn't do as well as it should for a 1 seed versus a 16 seed. It then faced Festival of the Lion King, and Festival of the Lion King held, a significant portion of that vote, still not even close, 78-22. Here comes Space Mountain, a 5 seed, wins 56-44. Then, it's as of 5 p.m. I don't know if that changed. But 56-44, that's pretty close. That's a good significant portion of the votes that Space Mountain was able to obtain. But Space Mountain has a lot of nostalgia. It's a very solid contender. But there are no mutual matchups with Big Thunder Mountain, considering that Big Thunder has never seen Space, it's never seen Festival, and it's never seen the Carousel. But Big Thunder Mountain was in the first year. This is the first year that it is in the Elite Eight. It lost to the Haunted Mansion in 2018, 61-39. That does not bode well for it. It lost to the People Mover in 2019, 52-48. That does not mean much because it just upset the People Mover to win in the rematch. So, Big Thunder, is it Big Thunder's year? I don't think so. I think Rise is going to pull it off. But I think it could be close. I think we're looking at a 55-45 split here as well, maybe even a 53, 47, 52, 48 situation. I still think Rise is going to edge it out. But if there's anything to surprise us, it's this one. Jack, what do you think?
Well, if we're talking about logically from a standpoint of just, the attractions in Walt Disney World, Rise of Resistance should definitely beat Big Thunder Mountain. for the reasons I stated earlier, Big Thunder Mountain is not the same attraction that it is in other places around the world. The one in Magic Kingdom is okay, but if that's the only one that you've ridden, then I'm guessing that you're gonna have a soft spot in your heart, a soft spot in your heart for it, basically. With regards to Rise of the Resistance beating out stuff like Space Mountain, and you're saying there's no mutual matchups for Big Thunder, I would have said Space Mountain is kind of sort of mutual to Big Thunder, at least in my opinion. I kind of class those two.
To clarify,
yeah,
that means they've never, like, Big Thunder has never faced an attraction that Rise of the Resistance has faced in the tournament. But go on with what you're saying though, because I know what you mean, and I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, so I mean, if Rise of Resistance managed to beat out Space Mountain, which a lot of people who visit Walt Disney World regularly love Space Mountain, it's always one that you've got to do at least multiple times on a trip, oftentimes. Big Thunder Mountain, I don't think has a chance against Rise of Resistance. Probably also to do with the fact, once again, that there's that Star Wars fandom there at play, and although this attraction may be new, the Star Wars as a fandom is not. It's over 40 years old, so therefore it's got the longevity factor. So it's classed as sort of a modern classic, like an instant classic in many ways, because people have always wanted to go on board a Star Destroyer and have that experience. So it's like an experience we've always had and we've always known. So it's kind of facing the same nostalgia that Big Thunder is. So yeah, I think Rise of Resistance will win against Big Thunder.
All right,
Nate, what do you think?
I think we have one more. Oh, wait, no, we have Nate. Yeah, we have Nate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Rise of the Resistance, being brand new to this competition, coming hot out of the gate as a #1 seed, and really just crushing the first 2 rounds. And it being the talk of the town, really, it's most likely Rise of the Resistance will just keep the momentum that it has going. Although it was interesting to see that its momentum slowed down a little bit when it did face up against a nostalgic ride like Space Mountain. And so it could be, there is a chance that Big Thunder Mountain, which I believe is actually a 3 seed, unlike labeled here as a 2 seed, but this is the one matchup where it's not a 1 versus a 2 seed. This is a 1 versus a 3 seed. Big Thunder Mountain being a little bit of a surprise in this competition. So who knows? But most likely, Rise of the Resistance will take this match, but probably in a similar close race as it was against Space Mountain. Not a total blowout like it was in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, what I'm interested to see, I think my last thought about that is what I'm interested to see is what the seeding will be for Rise of the Resistance when this is all done. Like how its votes stack up, and then how I know, Kev, you have that whole magic program to figure it out, formula, where that slaps Rise of the Resistance, because I don't know if it's going to go all the way. I really don't believe that, but I wonder if it's going to end up being a 2 seed or still holding at that 1 seed position, just based off of how it's behaving. But
I can tell you that if Rise of the Resistance wins, it's going to be a 1 seed next year if there's no other new 1 seed contenders that have to be added because the attraction
I gotcha.
is new.
Yeah, okay.
No,
that's fair enough. I understand. All right, and now let's take a look at the last matchup from the Inspiration region. The final match, Tower of Terror versus Pirates of the Caribbean. There you go. I said it your way, Jack. What do you think, Kev?
So the Tower of Terror is a strong contender always. It lost to the Haunted Mansion 56-44 in 2018. It lost to Splash Mountain in the Final Four. In 2019, 53-47. That's very close. It's a very close margin for Splash Mountain. It beat Pirates of the Caribbean last year at the same point in this tournament. This is a rematch in the Elite Eight. So if that's any indication, Tower of Terror is going to win. Pirates of the Caribbean lost to Haunted Mansion 55-45. That held its own in 2018 in the championship. There were a lot less votes that year. The next year it lost to Tower of Terror, as I just mentioned, 53-47. Very close margin. This is going to be the one to watch. Pirates of the Caribbean is looking for its second Final Four appearance. It was in the championship in 2018, and it did not break through the Elite Eight in 2019. So if it wins, this will be its second appearance. I think this is going to be the one that I can't make a call on. I think it's going to be 52-48, 51-49. This is going to be the one that's going to go back and forth. I think Tower of Terror might pull it off again, but I think Pirates of the Caribbean could surprise us. I can't make a call. I think it's just a 100% guess. Jack, what are you looking at here?
It has to be Tower of Terror. I can't see it any other way. To be honest, I'm a massive Pirates fan, but looking at how it beat, it beat Pirates of the Caribbean last time round, Tower of Terror, it's, especially with Mission Breakout and stuff like that, people hold this one even more dear now, as they did before, but, they care about it a lot more nowadays. I don't think it will. If we talk about the next round after, if let's say Tower of Terror wins and Rise of Resistance wins, I think that's the next round, obviously, and everything beyond then. I think that then it might come unstuck against Rise of Resistance. It'd be very close. But between Tower of Terror and Pirates of the Caribbean, I do think that Tower of Terror will win between the two of those.
Nate, what do you think? Who do you think's going to take it?
Yeah, absolutely. As we're about 2 minutes away from the polls opening up in this final round in the Inspiration Region final match, Tower of Terror 1 seed versus Pirates of the Caribbean 2 seed. I have to mimic pretty much everything you guys are saying. Tower of Terror, always a strong contender, most likely will outbeat Pirates, but I do believe out of all of the previous matchups, this is going to be the one that will be the closest. So it's very possible it could sway one or the other, but most likely I'm leaning towards Tower of Terror.
I don't know. I really don't know. I think that Pirates is just where I think Pirates is going to take it. I don't know. We'll really have to see. But here we go. Are you all ready? It is almost 8:00, moments away. So let us drop.
I feel like, should we do a countdown like New Year's?
Well, it's not going to be live with them because there's a delay for the audience. So I don't think.
Oh dear.
Well, it is almost
Thanks,
midnight
Janet
my time.
Jackson.
So can we please?
Yeah.
Let's do a countdown.
Okay. All right, guys, here we go. So head over to my Disney Dan Twitter, as well as Disney Dan on Facebook to check out the links as I'm sharing them right now with the world. So head on in and vote, and we can then start to take a look at the results live as they start to pour in.
I would love to read off the names of the categories.
Nate, take us through the
Let's
voting
go round.
and let us
Yes.
and tell the world.
So for this final four matchup, we will have this is the Elite Eight going against each other to go over to the final four. The categories we have are When Yetis Creak in Strobless Chambers, Haunted Mansion versus Expedition Everest. Then going over, we have the Floating Splash Mountains of Brer Dora, Splash Mountain versus Flight of Passage. We also have Rainbow Spire Ridge Outpost, Rise of the Resistance versus Big Thunder Mountain, and the very aptly named Gutenberg versus Depp, Tower of Terror versus Pirates of the Caribbean. The votes are already clicking in. I'm watching this bar graph go crazy, guys.
So now let's.
Can I just say,
sure.
Thank you for picking DSY newscast colours. I mean, it's just serendipitous. Thank you so much.
That was mildly unintentional.
So intentional.
But love you, buddy.
Yeah.
That is Disney Dan's subconscious at work, folks.
It's really just based on a very specific icon set that I started the design on that did not survive to the final design. But
Sure.
That's so funny. Didn't even put two and two together. But Kev,
it's weird that whenever I do graphics for a video, I always think obviously green for Animal Kingdom, but I always think blue for Magic Kingdom, and I always think like red kind of pinky color for Hollywood Studios. So it's weird that people just think the same way in terms of blue for Magic Kingdom and stuff.
It's almost like we've been coded.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, I just find it strange.
I think Bob Chapek has incepted us to think specific colors.
Yeah,
We've
I mean
been
yellow for Epcot. I always think white for Epcot. White is Epcot's color because obviously Spaceship Earth and everything like that. But
yeah, I went with the yellow just because white was I feel like a nice goldeny yellow has a futuristic spaceman vibe.
Oh my gosh, Big Thunder Mountain.
I was just gonna say, guys, I retract my former statement thinking Tower of Terror and Pirates of the Caribbean was gonna be the super close one to watch, but Rise of the Resistance and Big Thunder Mountain, they keep surpassing each other almost every second.
And again, we're taking a look at the results live. The graphs you're seeing are connected directly to your votes. So the more you vote, the more these graphs are going to move. Man,
But you should only vote once.
Right. The more of you that vote.
Yes. Not the more that you vote.
Absolutely. Make sure you copy and paste that Google form links and send it to people that may not be watching right now. Anybody that you know that loves Disney and attractions, send them this link and have them chime in with their votes.
And Big Thunder Mountain's chances of winning have just been obliterated because, just now we had 10 votes in a row for Rise of the Resistance and 0 for Big Thunder. It went on a 10-0 run, and I think that is just the end for Big Thunder. I don't think it's going to surpass that, but I could be mistaken. I want it to be. I want Rise of the Resistance to get upset. That's what I want. I don't know why.
Big Thunder Mountain fans are awake right now and voting in early before they go to bed, and the Rise of the Resistance fans are probably going to go well into the night.
Look at what's happening with Expedition Everest versus Haunted Mansion, though. I mean,
I know.
I'm just surprised that didn't do better.
That's you're right. I think it's going to even.
And then we're seeing Flight of Passage jumping, and Splash Mountain. Splash Mountain's beating out Flight of Passage. I obviously would have picked Splash Mountain over Flight of Passage, but I didn't expect everyone else to. I didn't know there was that kind of like love for Splash Mountain, the same kind of fandom, because you just don't see it. It's not like Song of the South has a huge fandom. That's a drastic understatement.
Yeah.
But yeah. I'm surprised that like Splash Mountain is beating out Flight of Passage, because obviously Splash Mountain's a fun ride, but Flight of Passage, I'm guessing there's more of an Avatar fandom out there, and what will be interesting is to see what Flight of Passage does in the future in 2022 maybe, when the next Avatar comes out, because obviously a lot of what's in Flight of Passage is meant to be referencing the future Avatar movies and stuff. So whether that will have more of a resonance with people and make it more of a top tier attraction, people like it a lot more because of it.
Well, we're looking at right now, and yeah, I do. I don't know. I mean, that movie's never going to come out. But that movie's been promised since what, like 2010, 2011. I'm convinced it's no longer. It's never going to come. But you have I'm just looking at this, and it is incredible to see Rise of the Resistance still hold on to that 45% vote, to see Expedition Everest be able to hold 42 to 57 against Haunted Mansion. That's impressive. And then, Flight of Passage is not surprising, but it's holding its own. But there's no big blowouts in this one. I mean, I'm not surprised Tower of Terror is winning. I'm surprised it's winning as much as it is. Obviously, I thought that was going to be the too close to call. It's winning way better than it did a year ago. I mean, a year ago, this was the 53 to 47, and now we're looking at a 60 to 40, 61-38. That's amazing. So all that said, what's going to be interesting coming up, though, is if everything stays the way it is and nothing dramatically changes, which, we're in that. I think we have enough votes to know that it won't. I'm comfortable calling all of these races, even though I'd like to continue watching them, and you all can disagree with me. The only one I'm not as too close to call right now is Rise versus Big Thunder. Let's say Rise goes against Tower of Terror. Who wins there? Jack, do you have an opinion there?
I mean, both of those attractions I really do love. It depends. Well, I mean, it depends how close the margin is between Rise of Resistance versus Big Thunder. Because if it's very close between Big Thunder and Rise, I think that Tower will probably beat Rise, because then it indicates that it's being chipped away time after time. Nostalgia is slowly chipping away at the newness, the newness of Rise of Resistance. So I think that Tower of Terror, being such a beloved attraction, especially the one in Walt Disney World, I think it will eventually beat Rise of Resistance. But it all depends on how it turns out between Rise of Resistance and Big Thunder. I do think it's going to be extremely close. I mean, I am surprised at Pirates versus Tower, though, because, like Dan said earlier about, the holistic approach of everybody thinking just, the whole Pirates of the Caribbean attraction instead of the specific one we're talking about, because that's what works in Haunted Mansion's favor so much. It's difficult.
Yeah. What if we looked at? Let's see. I haven't even gone to see the matchups. Nate, what do you see on the board right now?
Right now, we have just under 10 minutes that the polls have been open. We already have approaching 220 votes in, and looking pretty about average across the board. For all the matchups, as far as Haunted Mansion ahead by about 56% of the votes. Splash Mountain ahead with about almost little over 55%. Rise of the Resistance ahead, almost 56%, and Tower of Terror just hit exactly 60% of the vote. So the ones that are in the lead are in about the same between each match.
Okay, so if you looked at it this way, I don't know if this is how you usually do it, but if you actually think which one of these, if you had to pick one of these two attractions to actually get removed or replaced, not just the one that you like a little bit more, because then that means that in your mindset, they are both still in existence and you can still go revive the other one. You just like this one slightly bit more. But if you had to remove one of them out of, I think when it comes to Tower of Terror versus Pirates, I think that would be, a no-brainer. You'd obviously remove Pirates. Right. One in Magic Kingdom, and like Big Thunder versus Rise, I think that would be a no-brainer. You would remove Big Thunder because you've got the better version in other parks. But I think Haunted Mansion versus Everest is difficult, man.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting, if we look at the real logistics of how people vote, is that when people vote, they're asked themselves often. I think, at least, I'm assuming a lot of people. Yeah. My theory is that a lot of people, when they're voting, and when it's Big Thunder versus People Mover, they're saying, which of these would I rather ride when I go to Magic Kingdom? But when it's Rise of the Resistance versus Big Thunder Mountain, they're asking, which park would I rather go to? It's a totally different conversation. Yeah. So a lot of these transitive, trying to look at, this is this attraction versus this attraction, you got to also, I think of the parks. Because when you have Expedition Everest is helped because that is my favorite attraction at Animal Kingdom. Same reason Haunted Mansion's helped. But when you think of, Rise of the Resistance versus Big Thunder, I think a lot of people right now are saying, my favorite attraction at Hollywood Studios is Rise of the Resistance, and Big Thunder is my fourth favorite attraction at Magic Kingdom. So, I think that might help a little bit. That's speculative, but I think those kind of things are in people's mind because at least, me, when I'm at the parks, and I have a different approach because I don't live in Orlando necessarily, but I can get there pretty easily. So when I go, it's all about transportation. And a lot of times it's that I don't want to take the 4 transportation methods I need to get to Magic Kingdom. So I just end up riding these other rides more.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but that's just me.
Yeah, no, whenever I'm out in Orlando for a longer stretch, the plan is to move to America later on this year, hopefully once everything returns to normalcy again. I always, whenever I go to Expedition Animal Kingdom and stuff, I would rather ride Expedition Everest because, number one, I love the attraction, but number two, that park always feels hotter and more humid than the other parks, and so therefore you always want to be cooled off in many ways. So I always go to Everest and Dinosaur rather than hanging around in Pandora, because just the amount of plant life in Pandora, even though some of it is fake, and the way it's laid out, it makes it feel almost more humid in Pandora. It's just my theory. It just plays with your mental state from that kind of standpoint. So I think you've got a point there with the whole, which park do people would rather go to?
Which is a fair point, because when you're in Orlando, Florida, the last thing you want is more humidity.
Humidity.
Well, yeah, and I want an actual study to find out why Animal Kingdom feels that way. Is it in your head? Is it the theming, or is it really that there's so much foliage that
has to be plant life? Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be, or that the wind. Does like there's not enough airflow maybe?
I've
Or
forced myself to be convinced that it's shadier there. There's more shade, so actually it's cooler in Animal Kingdom
oh
than
yeah, so
standing in the black top of the open hub of Magic Kingdom.
I think that all the other parks just have so many wide open doors to indoors that are being blasted with air conditioning that the park just is naturally a couple degrees cooler when it's denser with buildings.
yeah, that's true.
Like Mouse Gears has cooled down World Showcase by a solid half a degree. It's like El Nino.
And the open doors at Starbucks have Main Street
Right.
nice and cool.
But as we're looking at these, yeah, I think that comes into people's minds. I think recency bias is a huge thing. I think Haunted Mansion fans, I mean, Haunted Mansion fans love the Haunted Mansion. They love the Haunted Mansion. I'm getting tweets and comments just saying like, sorry, I can't vote for Expedition Everest. It's a great attraction, but I can't do that to my Haunted Mansion. It's more than a ride experience in these people's minds. It is a lifestyle. And, of all of the aesthetics you could choose, probably the most easily accepted, widely accepted. I mean, I would advise against making fictional Nepal your at-home like office living room. But I mean, like creepy, weird, haunted vibe. That's always acceptable.
Do you think what plays into that is the fact because it is Haunted Mansion, it's easy to take things around the house and make them look more, antique or haunted and things like that. And so that's the reason why people identify a bit more with Haunted Mansion. I mean, it's interesting, the psyche element to it, isn't it? Because everybody, there's the whole horror genre and things like that. Whereas, like you say, there's not a huge subsection of society who just have lots of Nepal stuff. Unless you go to Joe Rohde's house, and I'm guessing the whole thing is themed like Expedition Everest.
You do make an interesting point there, Jack, because Dan and I have had conversations. Dan and I have had conversations walking around the park, and I guess within recent years, the popularity of Haunted Mansion has grown so much where they even, in Magic Kingdom, where we're focusing on here, they opened up within the last few years that their Haunted Mansion's own gift shop. Like it has, like where it's now full of everything, Haunted Mansion merchandise.
I think that you make an interesting point, Jack, though, about that, like the horror genre and like how that's kind of popular. I think that the Haunted Mansion allows.
That was my point.
Oh, sorry, Kev. I think that the Haunted Mansion. I just heard Jack say it. Technical directing and my ADHD is terrible.
Jack just says everything with more confidence than me. That's why.
It's the accent, though.
But I think that the Haunted Mansion allows the audience. It's like an easy entryway into that horror genre. It's like just a family friendly, it's just like it's not terribly scary, but it makes you jump a little bit, because one of those little heads behind a tombstone. It's just like you can say you like scary rides by liking the Haunted Mansion, while closing your eyes during half of, Indiana Jones. Because it's just like this warm, welcoming kind of doom and gloom.
I also think the other factor to it is the at-home Imagineering side of it.
Right.
Because, like when Halloween rolls around every year, everybody goes to the Halloween, to the store and buys, Halloween kind of stuff. And then they're like, oh, wait, I can make my house like Haunted Mansion. And then that kind of seeps into them year after year, and they get more ingrained into that thinking of, hey, I can create a Haunted Mansion room, and it's doable. Whereas it's hard to recreate a Pirates of the Caribbean room, or, you could maybe do Carousel of Progress-esque or Tiki Room-esque, but it's how easy it is to recreate. And I think a lot of people identify with Haunted Mansion and become massive fans of it because of that as well, because they can take a slice of Disney home.
I think it's also one of the most character driven of the attractions, of the original attractions. You have so many. You have is it Master
original
Gracie?
Characters? Yeah,
Master Gracie, is that right?
Yeah,
Master Gracie. You have the Hitchhiking Ghost. You have Constance Hathaway. I'm probably pronouncing some of these incorrectly. You have
Madame Leota.
Madame Leota. I mean, think about how many iconic. How many of these iconic characters came out of that attraction with backstories and with the updates. As the ride's been updated, they've been I mean, the Constance Hatchaway, the new room with all of her husbands, and
Yeah.
you know, that's a recent addition, right?
Yep.
And the
And
iconography
so-
and the design aesthetic and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
You know, it's you know, the wallpaper and things like that. It all matters.
Yeah, so you have all these characters. There's something to dig into, and with any fandom, it's you know, you have to have a deeper level that some people can reach. And I think with a lot of these attractions, the aesthetic alone is all there is, and there's really not that much to dig into. With the Tiki Room aesthetic and the Jungle Cruise aesthetic, not only is that an aesthetic that a lot of people are turned off by, given its rich, I think is a maybe an inappropriate word to use there, but rich history, from where, you know, a lot of that aesthetic comes from, no matter how it's implemented.
Storied history, maybe?
Storied
Yeah.
history. It's very you know, so I think that's part of it. But you know, even then, it's like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to really get into one of the tiki birds that has like a line versus these other that with every update you get a new room and their backstory is told through props? I mean, there's just so much to dig your nails into in Haunted Mansion. I think that helps a lot. Even with Pirates of the Caribbean, a very similar ride in that sense. There isn't that many characters that I think people latch onto as much. Maybe it's just the Haunted Mansion's just that good. I don't know. Could be.
The Haunted Mansion is that good. Let's just be real. It's great. I mean, do you think
I just
it has
I
to
just
be
think
because
Halloween
it just
plays a big part in it.
Halloween does play. America's love of Halloween
Because-
is huge.
Yeah, because like every year it comes around and you just think, oh wait, I can make a bit of Disney at home, and people end up inadvertently creating their own little slice of Haunted Mansion in their house, and then it resonates with them even more so. I think that kind of idea kind of seeps in. Whereas like when I was very young, when I was like 12, I remember saying to my parents, I want to create a beach in my bedroom, and my dad looking at me like I was nuts. And I was like, no,
Jack,
no,
you've got to
no.
stop drinking.
No. Well, 12 years old. I mean, you know.
Put the margarita
Start
down,
early
Jack.
in the UK, not that.
Put the Jimmy Buffett album
want
and
a
the margarita
daiquiri. I
down,
want a-
Jack. You're only 12.
I want sex on the beach. No. Anyway, so no, I was like, I want to take a part of my room and I want to put a sand pit in it, and I want a deck chair. Okay, and then I also I asked my parents for my birthday when I was 12. I said I want this from like a party shop. I wanted this palm tree, like this tinsel, you know, plasticky palm tree thing to hang from the ceiling. And I also got a hula skirt for that birthday as well when I was 12. So I was trying to armchair Imagineer or at home Imagineer my own like beachfront Hawaiian section of my room, and it was difficult, and I never did it. So I you know, I'm just saying that I think.
Oh my gosh, that didn't have a happy ending.
That did not. No, I didn't.
Just like the
I-
Haunted
yeah.
Mansion.
I did not get the sand pit in my room. No, for me to sit in a deck chair. No.
And every day I've wanted to come to America because that's the land of tacky sun pits
Are you gonna do
in
it
everyone's
now?
rooms.
Are you gonna get like Are you gonna do it now when you
And-
finally settle in and buy a house? Are you gonna have like a beach room?
I'm thinking of like turning maybe the bathroom into a beach room. I think it'd be nice to be sat on the toilet, rubbing your just putting your
Take
toes
shoes off, put some
Yeah.
put some sand under the toilet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, rubbing the sand between your toes. That'd be quite nice. And yeah, like
And
taking
whenever your toilet floods, it's just high top.
Okay, that's too far. Now, obviously, I've never had the idea to
Sanitize the
you know,
sand.
nowadays. Yeah, I'm just doing it in little sand pits and then trying to bury it and like wait for someone to discover it later on.
Don't let the cat in there. Whatever you do, just don't let the
Yeah.
cat in that
Yeah, I've just
bathroom.
created the human the human
Like,
equivalent of
Jack,
that.
did you just make a giant litter box in this bathroom?
Yes,
Is that
I
what
did.
you've done? If I could for 1 second be for my own little 2 cents on the Haunted Mansion, little selfishly and VO nerdy, Paul Frees, guys. Paul Frees,
Yeah.
the
Well,
ghost
he's in
host,
the Country Bears too, right?
is the he is in the Country Bears as well. Yeah, he's one of the. I believe he is one of the characters up on the wall. One of the bear or the moose, or not the bear, the moose or the
I could be
Deer.
wrong though.
But Paul Frees, phenomenal. The fact that they've kept that same narration all these years is a testament to how good.
He's Tony the Tiger, isn't he, as well? He was...
No,
voice.
Thurl Ravenscroft is Tony
Yeah.
the Tiger. He is also in the Haunted Mansion. He's the bass voice in the quartet there of the singing busts.
Perhaps Paul Frees is not in the Country Bear Jamboree. Who is in the Country Bear Jamboree? Who's Henry?
Oh, as Henry the host? That's a great question. That I don't know. We'll have to look that up.
Yeah, well, you're a voice actor guy.
You're right, and I don't know who the voice of in the Country Bears is.
Oh, it was Pete Renaday. I was thinking of Pete Renaday. You know who Pete Renaday is, right?
I do not, actually.
Yeah, he's just voiced a bunch of stuff. I know a voice actor that Nate Begle doesn't.
Hey, there you go. Stranger things have happened.
I think this is probably the strangest thing that's happened outside of the Jack's Beach Room story. Every time we cross paths, whether it's just casually or at Charity Land or at any live stream we do, I'm gonna ask you, hey Jack, you ever get that beach? And you're gonna, with one tear in your eye, say, it never happened.
I have a lot more crazier stories, to be honest.
Okay.
I've actually for a party back in when was it, 09? I think I was around 17. I built we had a Wild West theme and in the back garden, and I went full hog on it, and I built a whole saloon front out of wood and painted it all, and it looked amazing. And that stayed up in the garden for around 5 or 6 years before it kind of like rotted itself away. And we got loads of hay bales and like filled the garden. I did it properly. So the whole at-home Imagineering stuff that we're seeing on Twitter at the moment, which is fantastic, by the way. I should really do one of those.
And you saw my window.
Oh, I did see. I saw the window that could have just been a window, but
actually,
no.
It couldn't have been a window because that leads to my laundry room. So
I know, but
checkmate.
But I was like, you don't live in the Dharma Initiative. You don't live in a bunker, Kevin. Why are you creating fake windows?
How do you know I'm not in a bunker always?
Why are you in a windowless room?
It's not a windowless room. I built the window, Jack.
Kevin, also, if you take some black paint and like paint a thing on the wall, like a hole on the wall, you can run straight through it. Cartoon logic says yes, you can.
And the smell of pie makes me float.
Another little tip there. Yeah, and it makes you float, yeah.
Well, I stand by my fake window. I would love to see that scene set up of you saying, "Why are you living in a windowless room?" and me just pointing wildly to my fake window and saying, "What do you mean a windowless room? I'm showing you the fake window. That's what it's here for."
Is the window? Yeah, no.
Well, before
some like tech YouTubers, they actually do have like fake windows as part of their sets and stuff. And
so do I, Jack. It's there.
I know. Yeah, but I mean like a full proper window that's fake. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dan, do we want to read off the results once more?
Yeah, Nate. Before we head out for the night, do you want to take it? Let's check back in and rattle off where the votes are currently standing for all 4 rounds for this Elite 8 matchup.
Absolutely. All right, about half an hour into the polls, we have approaching little over 380 responses so far in the Exploration Region Round 4, Winyetis Creek in Stroblish Chambers. Haunted Mansion versus Expedition Everest. Haunted Mansion currently ahead with 58.5% of the vote. Over to the Imagination Region Round 4, the Floating Splash Mountains of Brer Dora, Splash Mountain versus Flight of Passage. Flight of Passage.
That's
That's what when they combine.
Flight of Passive.
Yes. Flight of Passive, Splash of Passaging. Splash Mountain is ahead right now with a little over 57% of the vote. Over to the Education Region Round 4, we have Rainbow Spire Ridge Outpost, Rise of the Resistance versus Big Thunder Mountain, and Rise of the Resistance is ahead with 56.7% of the vote. And rounding out this Elite 8 competition in the Inspiration Region Round 4, Gutenberg versus Depp, Tower of Terror versus Pirates of the Caribbean. Tower of Terror currently in the lead with 56% of the vote.
Ooh, man, this is a lot of close. We'll see. Maybe one or two of these will turn around. You know what I mean? Maybe, but I don't know. I think that we might be seeing our final four right here. But
I think the ones on the right hand side, I think Rise and Big Thunder, Tower and Pirates, I think those will get a lot closer. But I think we're probably looking at the way they probably are going to end up edging out the other ones. But I think they'll get a lot closer. I think that one narrow.
Yep, we'll see how tight the gap narrows overnight. Remember that you guys have until 7:30 tomorrow to vote, so make sure you vote, share the votes, on Twitter and Facebook and your Disney groups and all that kind of stuff. We want all the numbers we can get, so that we can for statistical stakes. Before we go, Kev, do you have anything? Any last thoughts for the evening?
No, I do not. I think this is, it was hard to predict some of these coming in, or one or two of them, and two of them were super easy to predict. And it ends up that, it was, the rankings are correct. If everything goes right now, we have 4 number 1 seeds in the final. And that is, that means that the bracket is set up pretty accurately if all 4 1 seeds make it. That might be the first time that's happened. Perhaps last year or the year before, all 1 seeds. But that's pretty good. To Rise of the Resistance was correctly placed, and it will remain a 1 seed next year, barring the opening. But as Jack said, some of that might get delayed now, of one of those e-tickets. So I think this is a good proof that the bracket was pretty accurately set up, and the votes are reflecting that. So I'm excited for the next round. I can't wait to do this tomorrow night.
Jack, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, just building off what Kevin said about the the seed 1 and things like that with regards to Rise of Resistance. The only other one which it will be up against next year will be Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, and I don't see that going very well for the Rat there versus Kylo Ren. I believe that Rise will probably beat out Big Thunder, and everything that we're currently looking at will probably stay the same. I'm glad to see Flight of Passage isn't beating Splash Mountain. I'm surprised at it. I really expected Flight of Passage to be beating out Splash Mountain there. As I'm in the minority. A lot of people don't like me for saying that I don't like Flight of Passage the same way. But I'm surprised to see Splash Mountain, beating out Flight.
Nate, what thoughts do you have before we head out?
All right, it looks like, as we all predicted, I'm leaning towards the number 1 seeds all moving on to the final 4, and I'm really intrigued to see the brand new edition Rise of the Resistance go up against Tower of Terror. I feel like that one is going to be a really interesting one. It's really going to be a competition of hardcore fan nostalgia versus hardcore fan excitement for the new ones. I think that is going to be the match to watch in the final 4.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't think. I think Haunted Mansion is going to take this whole thing once again. I don't see anything beating Haunted Mansion on the other side of the bracket. I really don't. Just like Kev said earlier, to the responses he got from a lot of his fans, I don't want to do this to my Haunted Mansion. I would think the same way versus any one of those over there, from Tower of Terror to Rise of the Resistance. I see Haunted Mansion 100% taking it, but who knows? This is in the hands of you guys, the people. So vote. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Nate, for hanging out with us.
Thank you, Disney Dan, as always, for having me. Jack, thanks for hanging out with us this entire time. Really appreciate it, buddy.
No, it's been fantastic. It's been great. I've really enjoyed it.
And thanks, Kev. And as always, guys, I really appreciate it. You guys all rock. So, keep voting. Keep being awesome. And thanks. Bye.
Bye.